This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. Helping you find emotional, spiritual, and physical balance. What does your future hold? It's time to find out with Psychic Suzanna.
Yes, you are in the right place. This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. Now, you can find us at psychicsuzanna.com, or you can go to 1110kfab.com. You're going to be able to listen to the show we're doing tonight again and again, and all of our great shows that we've had in the past. This show is centered about empowering you to get stronger with each day, handling the daily crisis, and moving through it with less terror. So what we're going to do today is have an interesting conversation. And as we're listening to the earlier news, and as we're listening to the councilmen fighting with each other, and as we're listening to it, it seems like we are surrounded with violence. And it's just become, how do we deal with this, even in the words and even in the actions and the notes and everything? I don't know if there's more violence or whether we're seeing it 24/7 now. I'm not sure which one, but we've got to learn how to let the violence flow past us and not have it harm us as we have been known to do. So our guest today is someone we've had on before, and I must tell you, his books inspire and help us greatly. And we are ready to talk to Dr. Johnathon Ellerby. Hello, Dr. Johnathon.
Hello. Thank you for having me back.
What a pleasant surprise and pleasant time to have you back, especially while we talk about violence. Your last book was Inspiration Deficit Disorder, although I'm reading your first book, which is called what again?
Return to the Sacred.
Yeah.
Pathways to Spiritual Awakening.
Yeah, you know, it is the problems we're going through is because the spiritual base has seemed to have gone somewhere that we don't know where it's at anymore.
You know, I really believe that. I mean, part of the message in the book, Return to the Sacred, is on one hand encouraging people to find a sense of peace and meaning in their daily life, but really to go through that daily moment of connection to start to see that the world around us really is remarkable. It's incredible. It's sacred. You know, that there's little miracles that are happening every day, and I think that the more people become disconnected and what we might call out of balance, you know, the harder it is for them to see the beauty of life, which isn't, you know, this is really important to say, this isn't like a fluffy fantasy conversation. The ability to see the beauty of life is the very thing that gives people hope and gives them the mindset that aligns them with making the world a better place. It's when people see so much negativity that they start to join it and create more of it.
Well, I think one of the problems that I sense in life, and when people come to me in my appearances and things, I tell people, get back to church or get back to sacred. That's, you know, in the Midwest, we have plenty of churches. Find somewhere where you can fill yourself up, where you can have support and know of the greater good. I fear that our children are not understanding the sacredness of each life.
Well, and I think that, you know, you raise another issue, which is that people are not even understanding that there is an opportunity to really connect with the feeling of the sacred in their spiritual communities, which means lots of people today are going to church, but unfortunately they're going because of obligation, or they're going because of guilt, or they're going because of habit, and maybe they have a nice sense of connection or community or history there, but they're not always engaging with the kind of open heart that lets them really feel reverence for their neighbors and for strangers and for the things they don't understand. And that's a disconnect that I think we need to heal.
Mm-hmm. How would you suggest we go about re-engaging with the sacred?
Well, It's funny because I like to suggest things that are really simple. I think that there are a lot of complex religious and spiritual ways to connect with the sacred, and I think each person listening needs to look at their own faith tradition and maybe reinvigorate or reinvest in whatever that is. But I like to turn people towards even simpler things, like spending more time in nature. Believe it or not, research actually shows that the more time people spend in nature, going for a walk or a hike, or regardless of the weather, just being, even fishing, hiking, that they're more likely to have a respect for life. They're more likely to have respect
Okay, I'm going to have to
others.
stop you for a minute. Because you threw in that regard to the weather. You're coming to us from Tucson.
I know, but I grew up where it was minus
We just
30.
had 3 inches of snow. And,
I know.
the walking outside, is walking inside good?
Well, maybe you could look out your window by the fireplace.
Okay, all right, because, the walking outside is just not my biggest thrill at the moment. But so connecting has us being with nature.
Well, so nature was one example. And I will say, though, that even people who live in cold places, you could bundle up and go for maybe a 15-minute walk or a little cross-country ski, or, even a lot of the guys that are out there on their snow machines, will tell you that they'll get to a quiet place out in the country, and they take their helmet off and shut their machine off, and suddenly they have a moment where all the busyness of work goes away, where all the distractions and confusion at home goes away, and suddenly life falls into perspective. So that kind of takes me to the other thing that I encourage people to do, which is find something at home that helps you create perspective. So for some people, that could be just a little breathing exercise, every morning when they wake up before they rush to get ready for work or pound back their coffee. It could be a reading from the Bible. It could be a little journaling. It could be any exercise that just helps you slow down.
Well,
feel a little quiet moment, just a quiet moment in this busy life. People are just constantly bombarded with noise and information.
Well, in both of it, when I go on the road, and I set up an altar in each hotel room. Right? In my home in Sioux City, I have an altar in Dale. So even by passing by it, I'm reacquainted with where my center belongs and where my center is. The George reads a scripture every morning, which is his way, not mine. And so we all can find a unique way to be spiritual, is what you're saying. And we need to incorporate it. Let's come back. I want to put the spiritual in children. I worry about I worry about the children, how we can help them to get incorporated into the spiritual understanding. This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. You stay tuned with us. We're going to find peace in your life. We're going to tell you how to find it and bring it into your life every day of every moment. And we will be right back. Stay tuned.
Psychic Suzanna.
Can't get through on the radio show? Call Psychic Suzanna anytime at 712-276-9349. That's 712-276-9349. Or visit her webpage, PsychicSuzanna.com.
Yes, we're back. This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. Now, you can go to Psychic Suzanna and you can get one free question asked. You can go to KFAB.com, listen to all these shows, but please join us on Facebook. You can go to Life with Psychic Suzanna on Facebook. You get a little message once a week. You get an inside detail of who's going to be on the show, and you can pass the word along, and you'll have the inside notes on what's happening here with KFAB. When you join Susanna Stickney, you find out other things. And I like to tell you where I am, but I also like to give you a daily inspirational kind of things, sort of telling you what I'm focusing on in living in the moment and trying to find peace in the moment. We are talking today with a gentleman that I find very helpful, and I'm really proud that he comes on the show. After we had our incident in Millard, where a child took a gun to school and killed the vice principal, I went and called Dr. Johnathon Ellerby. He is the author of several books, The Inspirational Deficient Disorder and The Sacred. Great books. Please check them out. I called him and said, I need you on the air, and he has been willing to join us on the air. Welcome back to the show, Dr. Ellerby.
Thank you so much.
By the way, I love your Facebook. You know, I linked to you. You know, this Facebook life is just phenomenal. Isn't it? We get a reach to everybody. You know what I love on Facebook too? Just side note. On Facebook, they, you know, all your friends, and it comes up there on your birthday, their birthday. So I get to go to everybody who's having a birthday, and I make sure I take time to do that and tell them a couple things about their year coming up, and give them salutations. And you know, it's just great knowing, you know, we are all born for a divine purpose. And wow, what a great thing, this Facebook. I'm just in love with it. Anyway, let's get back to you. Let's get back to the children, Dr. Ellerby. You know, the children seem to, like this was a child who in school got disciplined because he drove his car on the football field. So rather than deal with the discipline, he went home and got a gun. And then killed the vice principal, who, by the way, was wonderful. Sad. So how do we, on the outside, how do we not become fearful? How do we help our children understand that? And how do we help our children not do that? I don't know if we can help them not do that, but how can we help?
Well, I think we can help them not do that, you know, and I genuinely believe that we're failing for the most part in our society in general today, in the sense, not that we're not doing good, but we could certainly do a lot better. And sadly, we're seeing more and more violent crime at the hands of young people. So when parents ask me, well, how do I help my child to understand spirituality, not just our religion and our faith, but really to feel something in their hearts, I like to remind them that children are naturally spiritual, but what happens is we take it away.
Really?
I believe that. Some of the innate qualities of children are the qualities of creativity, curiosity, compassion, and connection. In fact, I keep them as C's so that parents can remember them. Creativity, curiosity, compassion, connection. I mean, when I say connection, I mean service of others, seeing other people as valuable and respectful. When we nurture those qualities that young kids have and then continue to feed them as they grow older, let them have unique interests without judging them. Encourage them to support their fellow classmates and not always be competing with them. Let them be curious about, you know, other ways of believing or other ways of living in this world without always forcing judgment upon them. When we start to cut off these natural expressions of spirituality, then kids start to become less empathetic, less sympathetic, and frankly more likely to let television be their guide. And then what we have on the video games and the popular movies today is this idea that a gun can solve a problem. And unfortunately, that's a very emotionally immature and dangerous message, but it's not really the child's fault, right? There needs to be a whole other world that is being shown to that child so that they know that message is not true.
Well,
you see what I mean?
I want to interrupt, though, because, you know, I'm an older generation. I'm 60, loving the 60s, going to turn 61, loving that. But anyway, when we were growing up, we had guns and cowboys and Indians. But it seemed like we understood. Why do we have a disconnect that they don't understand?
Right. What makes it different? Well,
yeah.
I think there's a couple of things that make it different. You know, first of all, families, the world was just smaller back then, which means parents spent more time with their children at the dinner table. They communicated more with them. Now kids, they have lessons. They have their own cell phones. They're in their own rooms with their own TVs. I mean, even in homes where there's a low income, kids are spending more time watching television than they are with their parents. And, you know, even 30 years ago, that wasn't true. You know, kids were around their parents, which meant they were around and actually a responsive entity, not just a TV that's sending messages that the kid gets to pick, right? And they're going to pick violence or sensational things, but they are around a parent who could be responsive and say, okay, we may have played cowboys and Indians, but here's what you need to remember, when you go to school,
right.
Or, if you fall down and hurt yourself, I'm going to come and pick you up, or here's what are fair rules and here's what are unfair rules. Whereas now, with less contact with the parents and more depersonalization of strangers, as well as that dose of violence, it's a very bad formula. And I don't believe that, having an interest in guns is all bad. I don't believe that playing, games with guns is all bad. It's the absence of the other tempering forces that's so dangerous.
Right. So if a child does not have an active parent in their life, or if they go through divorce, do you think that this is caused by, should parents stay together because it seems like children of divorce seem to react more? Is that a side note, or am I thinking wrong on that?
Not necessarily. What we seem to be finding, and I'll say that, this is in some of the research, although, how good is the research, I don't know, but it certainly supports what I see in my sort of private practice work. It's really all about how you do things. It's not always about what you do. So when a divorce is done in such a way that the parents communicate clearly with the child, what's going on, that the child is loved, that the child is safe, that the parents don't let their bitterness get in the way. I mean, in other words, there is such a thing as a healthy divorce. Now, I'm not promoting divorce. I'm just saying that if that happens, you can do it in a way
it doesn't have to harm the child.
Victim. Exactly.
All right. We're going to take another break. I am honored to tell you that we have Dr. Johnathon Ellerby on with us tonight. Stay tuned. This is the show where you're going to grow. This is the show where you're going to be given help on getting your life better. This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. We'll be right back with Dr. Johnathon Ellerby.
Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB.
This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. We are talking to Dr. Johnathon Ellerby, who says he will give us some more time because he is definitely helping us understand how to handle the violence that we see in our world. And we have more minutes. How many minutes do we have?
Oh, I'd say 3 minutes,
okay.
3.5 minutes.
Dr. Ellerby.
Yes.
Thank you for staying on. Tell me, when our kids see this violence, when our kids, like the fifth graders, the violence happened at the school, you had violence down there.
Yeah.
When the fifth graders had to go under the desk, they had no idea why they were under the desk. It was in another school. The alert had everybody on alert, and so, all preventative stuff. How do we, when the kids come home, when the kids have something like this happen, how do we help them understand what is going on?
Well, it's such an important question, and I think the first thing that a parent needs to know is that they don't have to have all the answers in able to help their child through something like this. So what happens is a lot of parents will feel overwhelmed and really, you might say, scared or inadequate.
Right.
So they'll say, well, I'm afraid of starting a conversation because, what if they ask me something I don't know the answer to? Or what if they're crying? Or what if they're upset or angry? It's okay. The most important thing that you can let your child do is just process the experience. And all that means is you just need to be mature enough to just listen to them. And if they say, well, it scares me, or I don't understand, it's okay as a parent to say, it scares me too, I don't understand. When children, in fact, when anyone goes through a traumatic or confusing, scary situation like that, the most important thing is that their emotional experience needs to be validated. So they know that it's okay that they're overwhelmed by this. You give the best answers you can to why things happened as they did. And you also don't try to, fake it, which means if you can't explain something that happened or that's going on, don't try to. It's okay to sit with a child and say, terrible things happen in life, and we're all blessed if we, if we are not victims of them. But this is a part of the world that we're a part of. And so it's this kind of, we don't condone violence, but we recognize that it's part of our world. When it happens around us, we let the people we love express how it's made them feel.
Wow. Well, do you feel the children will hold this in a while before they express it? So should the adult be the one who opens up the conversation?
Absolutely. See, what happens is if the adult doesn't make the first step, many children will not make it, even in a loving home where they openly talk about emotions, which isn't necessarily the average home. A parent needs to let the child know, when and if you want to talk about this, I am ready for you, and then revisit the conversation in a couple of weeks if the child hasn't brought it up.
Okay. We thank you for holding on with us. We'll be back after the news with Dr. Johnathon Ellerby. He's written some wonderful books. You want to get him on Facebook. This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. You can find us at PsychicSuzanna.com, where you'll get a free question. You can find out what I'm doing. You can go to KFAB.com. You can play this show again and again. This is a winner tonight. Please join us on Facebook. Life with Psychic Suzanna lets you know what's coming up. And Susanna Stickney will tell you what an affirmation, my thoughts of the day, and things like that. So please join us on Facebook. It's a hoot. Now, we're talking tonight with someone that I've grown to respect greatly by looking over his two books, The Return to the Sacred and Inspiration Deficient Disorder. His name is Dr. Johnathon Ellerby. He's on Facebook. You can find him there. And you can find these books, which I think should be used quite often. We're going to go back to you, Dr. Ellerby. Are you there?
I'm here.
All right.
Happy to be here.
And you're in, by the way, would you like to let us know what the weather is there in Arizona?
Well, I don't want to upset anyone tonight. Well, it's cold tonight. To us, it's cold, so that means it's probably 55,
Oh, you poor children. What is it here, Jim? What is it here?
We have 10 degrees, but it was -5 this morning.
Yeah.
Hey, come on. I had to put on a sweater tonight.
Oh, my
suffering.
God. I'm suffering for you. Okay. All right. And now let's get back to the reality of this whole violence thing that has been in our face the last 3 weeks, or even longer. But it seems to be almost like a collective consciousness. Something happened and something else goes on, something else. Is there a collective trauma or collective stress that, do we hear it and then go crazy? Tell me about the collective mind of this kind of thing with trauma.
Well, I think you're highlighting two very important things, which is, one, can there be a collective cultural shift that promotes violence? And two, can there be a collective cultural experience that simply demands the need for release, or is like a collective experience of frustration? And I think both things are going on, and I think that's a conversation a lot of people in the media are not having, which is, yes, on one hand, and we may get to this, on one hand, we could agree that there's a lot of violence in media, there's a lot of violence in political rhetoric, there's a lot of violence in our movies, and video games and so on. I think that's true, but I think what's not being addressed is probably a bigger issue, which is over the last 2 years, I'd say there's been a growing culture of distress more than violence. Distress?
In what way?
Well, we've had political struggle in the sense that, very strong opposition between parties. We've had a very difficult economic time. That's an understatement, where the financial stability of the country's done flips over the last 2 years. Huge amounts of unemployment and uncertainty. And this kind of stress creates a collective tension that I think moves everyone a little bit closer to their breaking point. And those people who are less stable or more prone to violence are simply going to be just moved along down the spectrum.
You know, I must tell you, I went to I love the history in the presidential libraries. I went to the Abraham Lincoln Library in Springfield, Illinois. And I'm reading what other people were saying about Abraham. I mean, there were some very disgusting things that they were saying about the man that we thought was wonderful. So I'm not sure that the political rhetoric is worse. I think it's just more visible because of the media being on top of that.
I think that's absolutely true. I think it's very well said, and I think that what complicates it is not necessarily that people are more hateful or aggressive than ever before. I think what complicates it is that it's easier to share a message with more people than ever before, and the ones that are more inflammatory just get more time on television. You know, it's just more sensational.
I play dominoes, and I have a domino diva who has moved into an apartment and not taken a TV.
Ah, interesting.
And she's trying to disconnect from the violence that we see on TV, and we see it right in front of us all the time. And again, where you put your attention to is always what expands. Yeah. So we're putting our attention to the stress and the collectiveness. That is going to cause us to go out on the limb in a crazy way? Is that what you're basically saying?
Well, I mean, I would be careful about ever saying that one thing causes another, because there's always so many factors.
There
right?
are. You're right.
With the violence we've seen, mental health issues are involved, and so on. But I think there is something important around what are we feeding ourselves with. In fact, what I recommend from time to time is that people take a junk mood diet. So instead of a junk food diet, give yourself a week or two where you just, try to take in less negative, but people, media, even mindset for yourself. So that's not just about putting the blame on TV and radio and newspapers, but even the people you hang out with. Some of us have people that I think we all know who we're thinking of. They tend to be negative. They tend to be gossiping. They tend to be a little more spiteful or hateful. And, sometimes you just need to back off a little bit so you can get your own sense of perspective.
Well, don't you feel guilty though when you back away from someone who's negative all the time? I mean,
I don't.
I do. Yeah, I don't either. I've gotten to a point where if you're a downer, I'm away from you, and I will give you some hope to help you. But if you don't want to be helped, I'm not going to rescue you. So I think the lesson is not to rescue, right?
Yeah, there's an old saying: you can't help someone out of a hole by jumping in with them.
Oh, I like that.
Okay.
You can't help someone out of the hole by jumping in with them.
Yeah, and okay. I think you raised something really important, which is that, we do care for people who can be negative, and we can feel guilty about creating distance, but sometimes pulling back is exactly what that person needs to experience to see that they're pushing people away. And when they see, wow, people aren't coming to the lunch table at work with me because all I ever do is complain and gossip, some of those people will get the message and they'll start putting their attention elsewhere.
I must tell you, I've had a few clients this week in my appearances, and a couple of them have been in pity parties where they're out in public, and they're in this huge pity party, and I always tell them that you're the only one that can be invited to that party. It's your party. You make it. You have only food for one. Nobody wants to be with your pity party. Yeah. So how do we get out of that area? How do we get out of that negativity?
It's going to sound easier than it is to do. It starts by just making the commitment to be more aware of how you're thinking. So believe it or not, step one is just pay attention to your thoughts, because a lot of us just think without thinking about what we're thinking. I mean, it sounds a little complicated.
All right, go through that one more time, please.
So pay attention to what you're thinking. Just notice more. Wow, am I being critical again? Wow, am I being judgmental again? Wow, am I looking for the negative again? So step one is just be more aware. Then step two would be watch what you say. try a week where if you can't say something nice, you don't say anything at all. Or maybe you rephrase what you're going to say. So change how you speak. So first one is awareness. Second one has to do with what you say. And then the third, most challenging, is when you catch those negative thoughts, you don't just notice them, you replace them. So if you say to yourself, I'm never going to get that promotion, you stop. You actually say, wait a second, maybe I will. Maybe I will. Or, there's that neighbor, what a jerk. Or maybe you stop. You don't just notice the thought. You say, I wonder why he's like that. Or I wonder what happened to him that he became like that. If you can't find a positive thought, then at the very least, be curious. Ask a question, because you never really know what's going on in someone else's life.
Now, as we close our time together, and it's been a blessing for me and our audience, can I ask you just a personal insight? By the way, once we were talking, and you had your son come up to you. Is that correct?
Wait, what's that?
What? Yeah, stay with me.
That's right. I think we did.
And your son, how old is he?
Well, he's about 2.5.
And I noticed you stopped the conversation with me. I felt a little hurt, but I got through it.
Oh, when you and I were talking privately, that's right.
Yeah, and you started talking to your son, which I love that. You prioritized your son, and I really entreat that. Can I just ask, how does Johnathon Ellerby start his day?
Oh, you know what? Absolutely. I have a few morning rituals I always do. The first thing, we have a tiny little balcony off our bedroom, so it's not, don't picture something fancy, but it's just a little perch. Every morning I go out, no matter how cold, and I know some of you are up to your knees in snow, but I used to do this when I lived in Canada. I just go out, and even if it's 60 seconds, I'd breathe fresh, real air in. I'd look at the sky, and I would just take a moment just to feel grateful for being alive. Then I go off to a quiet place in my house, and I take about 5 minutes, to be honest. It's nothing complicated. I do a little centering exercise, a little just prayer, try to have a quiet mind, get my head focused on the attitude I want to have for the day, feeling grateful, count my blessings, and off I go.
Okay, and that sounds wonderful. I stay in bed and I breathe deeply and do my thank yous. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, I got a body today. I get to breathe today. I got eyes. I can see. I used to be in a wheelchair because I broke my femur, so I can walk today. I I mean, the attitude of gratitude. So how do you end your day?
I think I end my day the way you begin your day.
Oh,
which
really?
Is when I'm in bed, I will take some time, quite literally, when the light goes out, before anything, any other thoughts or distractions, and I just very intentionally take a moment just to breathe very deeply, feel the, the support of the bed, and feel the rest coming on, and I just take time to feel gratitude. I have a bed, I have a roof over my head. Even if it's been a tough day, we can be grateful for real simple things. So I try to finish with just a little gratitude. And it's not just gratitude, but for me it's also about recognizing that there is a higher force and power, and that I don't need to go to bed worrying because something bigger is in charge of this universe than me. So I can just hang it up and go to sleep.
What a great blessing you have been to the show. I will look forward to talking to you again. This is Dr. Johnathon Ellerby. He's written quite a few, 2 books. I see another one in his future. And I look forward to hearing from you again. God bless, and thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
And this is Life with Psychic Suzanna. We're getting ready for your calls. Yes, you can call us, and we're going to talk about your future and what's ahead for us, all right? This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. Stay tuned. You belong with us. You're right. You're right where you need to be. This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. And this is the time of the show where we talk about you and your life and get you pointed in the right direction or find out what's going around. And you can give us a call. What are the numbers, Jim?
1-800-543-1110 or locally, 11:10.
Now, I want you to know, join us on Facebook, Life with Psychic Suzanna. You get a message of who's coming up. Next week, we're going to be talking to someone from Omaha Jobs. It's all about finding you a job, maybe getting in a career you want to be in. It's about making your life a little bit better. This is what the show's about. Also, follow me at Susanna Stickney on Facebook. All of that, you'll be able to hear what I'm doing. And I like